Hi everyone, I'm Stewart from the Norfolk Honey Company, as you're probably aware, and we're here at one of our apiary sites, which we call the fishing lakes, in order to carry out a range of inspections today. But for this video, I just wanted to kind of update you on where we are and what we're up to and what our plans are for this season. And then we'll, once I've finished waffling, we'll get into a colony and carry out a full inspection, just to kind of give you a feel for how we inspect through the spring and I guess into early summer. It's late spring, mid-May, and we've had a fairly torrid time over the winter and early spring period. Like most people here in the UK, we've struggled with the wet weather, the extended cold periods, the flooding, and really struggled to get into the beehives in any significant way in late winter and early spring. Thankfully, most of our colonies that were in locations that we couldn't really get to because of the flooding had plenty of food because we took them to the heather moors for the first time last year. And if you'd like to catch up with the full story of our season, then do take a look at our Patreon page, and the link is in the description beneath the video and also at the bottom of the screen. And on our Patreon page, we post regularly into the active season, several videos a week. I also have my weekly podcast called Beekeeping Short and Sweet, which is available for free. But you can get the very latest weekly edition by signing into Patreon. And there are also some free videos available on Patreon as well, so you can sign in there for free. But to access the higher tier levels and all of the content, then take a look at the different subscription levels. So we came through the winter with colonies that were doing okay. When we could get out and pop some fondant onto the colonies, we were able to, and I think that's really helped us in the early spring. A lot of reports have come out of colonies starving or being near to starving, and we managed to escape most of that, I'm thankful to say, because of the fondant and the pollen substitute that we'd been adding from, I guess, mid to late February. The upshot of that is that we had some very large colonies coming out of the winter period, and significantly a lot of the colonies that we've produced with our own queens have subsequently swarmed, and we've suffered possibly one of the most swarmy starts, if that's an expression, to a season that we have for many years really. Interestingly, the queens that we buy in from Luke and Susie at Northumberland Honey were very slow to swarm, which is fantastic, and we've been able for the most part to control that swarming because the weather has changed sufficiently for us to be able to get into the colonies. So we're in a position now where we've got quite a lot of colonies that swarmed very early, and those have new queens, and they are just coming into a position of being able to lay. And we've carried out some splits, and of course if you split colonies you end up with more bees. We're selling quite a lot of colonies, and I talk about that on the Patreon page, and I won't go into the reasons for that here. But some of the colonies that swarmed, we also have used those queen cells to create nukes. And of course, if you create nukes from swarmy bees, then you're likely to end up with more swarmy bees. And so we're going to replace those queens with queens from Northumberland Honey. And again, if you check in the description, I'll pop a link to their website in the notes beneath this video. So we're kind of at the end of the oilseed rape production. We've got quite a reasonable crop despite the swarming that we've had, and we'll be extracting that in due course. And now thinking about preparing our colonies for the borage pollination that will happen at the beginning of July. So we're preparing colonies now for the end of June so that we can take those to the borage for crop pollination. We're also preparing some colonies here at these fishing lakes for the heather honey. We're going to take the bees to the heather moors once again this year, and if you'd like to follow all of our exploits through this season, then do log into the Patreon page where you'll be able to access all of the videos there, depending on the subscription level that you take. But we'll also post some regular videos here on our YouTube channel. So that's kind of where we're at. We have switched entirely to Langstroth hives, so we now use solely Langstroth hives. I guess my preferred hive is the honey poly Langstroth, and we find that the bees do really well in that. But we also have the Technoset hives that we're using, and they've been fantastic for us as well. So that's kind of where we're at. Let's take the camera through to the apiary. I'll grab the smoker, get my suit sorted, and I'll see you at the hive. So we'll carry out just a standard inspection really for everybody, just to kick off the new season. A little bit late kicking it off at this moment in time, but it is what it is. So we moved this colony from an oilseed rape field that had actually finished flowering quite early this year, and so this is one that part of the tree falling down. We've marked it up as being queen right on the 4th of May. I like to pop a note on top of the roof so that it lets me know what's happening, just in case we've got any issues. So I'm going to take the feeder off as well, just to have a look, see what's happening in the supers, and they're drawing the comb really well. Let's just grab the smoker. Yeah, that's going quite well in there. So we'll pop the feeder back on because we don't actually need to go into the box there. This is really heavy, so I'm going to be careful lifting it down. Now you'll notice, maybe, that we don't actually have a queen excluder on here, and this year we've used quite a number of our supers without queen excluders, just to see if that encourages the bees up. But one of the knock-on effects is that you end up with brood in the super, and in this instance we do have eggs in the super. So we just need to be mindful that we may have a queen in the super. So we'll just lift this one down. Well, these bees actually a little fractious today, so we can pop this off. I'm just going to pop the feeder. So this is an integrated feeder, part of the Technoset range. We'll pop that down on top of the other super, and it doesn't matter that the queen may be running around between the two supers there. We'll sort through them as we get through into the point that we're going to take that off. So let's have a look at what's happening in here and see how these bees are doing. So I'll take it quite steadily, and we have lots of food stores in there, so there's lots of honey and pollen. So we'll leave that just against the front edge of the stand. You'll notice that I'm using quite a bit of smoke because these bees temperament isn't the greatest, so we just need to manage that. So here we've got a frame of sealed brood, the majority of which is worker brood, but there are one or two cells that are drone, and if I just move the bees away at the top here, it's quite useful to be able to see these additional cells. If I use the hive tool just to point them out for you, and these are all male bees, so these are going to be drones, and we have the same on the other side around the top edge. But we've got a nice area of sealed brood, all capped there, so that looks really good, nice and healthy. So that kind of in my mind ticks a box. I'm looking as I go, I always glance across at the adult bees just to see what they look like, and in particular I'm looking for anything that maybe looks abnormal. So within all of these healthy bees, it's very easy to spot an occasional bee that may have deformed wing virus, for instance. So here we have a frame where they are storing nectar. There are some eggs. The queen has laid eggs in this frame on the side facing me, and we've got lots of pollen coming in as well. So when you're using your smoker, you don't have to really be aggressive with the smoker for the most part. It's sufficient just to gently ease the bees away with some of that smoke. They will move quite quickly once the smoke kind of hits them. So you don't have to be aggressive with the smoker. Now on this frame we again have lots of eggs, which is great. And in fact, so here's an interesting point. We have the queen here. So this is our queen wandering around. I don't know if the camera is picking her up. She's just about to wander close to this rudimentary queen cup here. So I'm just going to open that up and just see if we've got anything in there, because I want to make sure we don't have any queen cells. And this queen is from last year, and she would have had a red dot on her, but that's now gone. So what I might do is just pause the video, see if I can find a red pen, and we'll put another red dot on her. So welcome back. I've just found a pen, given it a bit of a shake, just make sure that it's working. So we've got a red dot there. So marking the queen, you can do it in many different ways. You can use the various catching devices, but actually I quite prefer just picking the queen up by the wings and resting her on my forefinger. Now I would normally wear nitrile gloves if I were out marking queens generally. I wear these marigold gloves, washing up gloves, because they're hard wearing. I can still generally feel the bees through the gloves, but they're not single use, and I'm trying desperately to do what I can to move away from single use products. So let's see if we can pick up this queen and get her marked. So we come in. You need to be gentle, but actually you need to commit to this. So once you start to pick her up, you need to make sure that you get both wings and then rest her on your finger. And the ideal way is to get her moving away from the position that you're actually going to pick her up. So she's actually trying to find somewhere to lay eggs. So I'm just going to turn her around so that we can try to get her bending down. Now she's just laying an egg, so when she comes back out, I'm not going to disturb her while she's laying an egg. So she's just here, and she's now come out, and we can just pick her up. Get these workers off my gloves. So it was a bit of a struggle, just making sure that I'd got her. So what I do is I use my thumb just to clamp her leg and hold her down, and then I can pop the dot on her thorax and away she goes. And that will dry very quickly in this sunshine. It's very warm, and hopefully you can see her. Let's try and just tilt this so that you can see her moving across on that frame, and she's perfectly fine. So let's get this frame back in. Now the added benefit that we have here is that we know the queen is now in the brood box, so we can put a queen excluder on here, and that will allow us to have all of the brood that's in those super frames emerge, and it will then get filled with honey stores, and we can remove that and extract it, knowing that there's absolutely no brood in there at all. So that's really good news. So let's carry on with our inspection. As I go, I'm kind of looking at the, now that we've looked at the adult bees, I'm looking at the brood and checking what kind of condition the brood's in as well. Lots of eggs here, so she's really starting to lay very strongly at the moment. That's all eggs and brood. And sometimes these colonies are so calm. This one's a little bit lively, but sometimes they're so calm that you don't need to use a great deal of smoke at all. I'm just trying to get the smoker fuel going again because I haven't really used it that much. So in with the hive tool. I quite like the J tool. It helps me lift the frames out quite easily. So this frame is a little bit damaged around the bottom here. It's kind of become bent and twisted, and we've got what could be a rudimentary queen cup, or it could be the start of a queen cell. So we'll peel it open, and here we have, right in the middle is a tiny larvae that we need to take out. So that's a queen cell. So now we have to be thinking that this colony is starting to produce swarm cells. So the position of that would kind of indicate that it's a swarm cell, and also knowing that the queen actually is laying really strongly and she looks really well would kind of tell you that they're not trying to supersede their queen. They're actually looking as if they need more space perhaps. So we could go as far as to add an additional box of brood frames, and I think that's something that we may well do. We should probably think about that as we're going through, because all of this sealed brood that you see is going to emerge and dramatically increase the number of bees, adult bees, that we have in this hive. So on this frame I'm seeing more queen cells. It can be problematic from this point onwards inspecting for queen cells without being able to see all of the brood. So what we'll do is we'll shake the bees off the frame. It's a very simple process. The frame goes back into the brood box. I pop my fingers under the side lugs of the frame and then just sharply tap down 2 or 3 times, and that knocks the majority of the bees off. Now you can see they don't really like that, so we'll have to use the smoker in a moment, but I just want to take these cells off, and it's likely that you would miss some of those queen cells if you weren't shaking the bees off. So despite the bees being a little bit grumpy and not wanting me to interfere with them, it's important that we check each of these frames. Now, my normal process of doing all of this would be a lot quicker, but for the purposes of this video, we'll take it slowly. So when you get bees on the lug where you want to hold it, just move your fingers around and the bees generally will just move away, and then you can grip it more easily. So if we wanted to shake this one off, there's not that many bees on this frame actually, so we don't really need to shake them. So looking at this side, we can see that we have 2 cells just at the top here, which I'm going to cut off. It doesn't look as if there's anything in those, so maybe we're just at the point where this colony is wanting to start swarm preparations, and we'll take that one off as well. And then I can see, if you use your finger just to gently move the bees, most colonies will allow you to move the bees around without any problem at all. So that one can go back in. Let's approach these last couple of frames. If you have lots of bees on top of the frames here on these top bars, and they start getting a little bit too grumpy towards you, or you start to find the bees boil out from between the seams of these frames, then just use the smoke and you'll see that we've immediately driven those bees back down. So 2 frames to go. Yet more brood, and with the experience that I have, I can look along the bottom here and just see past the bees that we've got and see that there are no large queen cells. But if you're just starting, you might want to shake the bees off anyway, just to give yourself that reassurance. And looking at the side towards me, there's one rudimentary queen cup in the corner, and this is a popular place for them. If you put your hand around the corner and use your middle finger and thumb, you can just squeeze that together, and that destroys that cell, and then the bees won't use it for any queen cell production. So again, we've got several along the bottom here, and I can use my finger and thumb just to squeeze those together, move the bees away nice and gently. Another one there. So this is an alternative to shaking the bees off. And then just around the top edge, nothing further there. So that's our penultimate. Now look, there's lots of bees here, and if I just place my hand here, gently move the bees away, I can grip the side without any problem at all. The bees here are not actively looking to sting, so famous last words of course, but you'll end up with a handful of bees and they're perfectly fine. There's no problem with those at all. So we just shake the bees off a hand and then into the last frame. So we've marked the queen. We know that she was last year's queen, so we've given her a red dot. And this frame, the outside frame, you will hear people tell you that you won't find queen cells on outside frames because it's full of food stores. But look here, we have 2 rudimentary queen cups in preparation, and so it's important that you do go all the way through. There's another one here. Go all the way through every single frame and check to make sure that there's nothing in any of those rudimentary queen cups. So just looking across all of that comb, I can see no more that side, and then on the outside face, just move the bees away from where there could be a queen cell, nothing there. So that's our inspection complete. So now we just need to get the bees off the top frame so we can manipulate these frames back. And it's just around the sides that we need, where we need to use our fingers just to move these frames. So one of the issues that I currently have with some of our colonies is that they have a mixture of different frames in them, and so it's a little problematic trying to position the frames easily. So I have to move currently some of them one frame at a time. And now if you're using self-spacing frames, then that problem doesn't exist and you can move them. So here we have 3 frames that I can move quite happily and maintain the spacing, and then this last one again doesn't have the spaces on it. So, and we will, in fact, if we give these some more space, we can put another box of brood frames on top, and hopefully they'll draw those, and then we can remove some of these older frames. So this frame finally has quite a number of bees on it. Now if we just push that down, we're going to end up rolling a lot of these bees against either the side of the hive or the first frame. We don't want to do that, so we'll just shake them off, get rid of as many of the bees as possible, and then that can go in quite nicely and maintain the bee space without killing or harming any bees. So we'll just get the bees off the top, because I want to just carefully remove this wax, because I don't want them building that up to the box that I'm going to place on top. So what we need to do now is get another one of these brood boxes with frames in, which I've got on my truck, and a queen excluder, which I'll bring across as well, and then we can reassemble the entire hive. Well, here we are, brood box with 10 new frames and foundation, lovely fresh foundation. I just want to move the bees off the top here. So that's most of those moved out of the way. We can lift this box on, pop it on at an angle, and then we can gently twist it across, and any bees that are still on the top get brushed off without being injured or killed. So on these Technoset hives, they have these useful little clips to pull everything together, so that will hold that box together, and then again at the back. So we've had a fairly successful inspection. The bees look in great shape. We've got a queen that's laying very strongly. Only one queen cell really, the others were rudimentary queen cups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just to remind myself how to count. And a queen excluder. We know we've got our marked queen in the bottom box, and so we can lift our supers back on one at a time. Now this first one has brood in it, remember, so there is a possibility that we could have queen cells in the super. Now, one of the ways you can quickly check is just by lifting up and tilting it backwards, because very often you will find that the queen cells will be hanging down. So we have a look, and here we are, just to illustrate that fact. If I stand this up gently and I can point them out. Now these are all rudimentary queen cups by the looks of things. They're the little kind of acorn cup, and if I just open these up, you can see that we've got quite a number. This one has an egg in it, so that's going to become a queen cell. Oops, the frames are just falling backwards. So lots of potential queen cells here. So we need to actually go through this box and inspect them. So let's get this on properly. Now I'm not going to bore you with my inspection of this super. We'll carry on and go through this and just put it back together again, but maybe for YouTube we'll come back and revisit this colony and have a look to see, maybe in a week or two, how well they've done in drawing this second box, this green box. Well, that's it for this video. If you'd like to catch up with our journey so far and our ongoing journey through this season, then do have a look at the Patron page, because we have a lot more content there, particularly videos and the very latest podcast. But if not, hang around here at YouTube and we'll post some regular videos through this season and catch up with you next time. Thanks for watching.